Hi everyone, I'm Apurva and welcome back to the CapitalNet TV. Today we are going to be looking at the rewind of 2021 in terms of the global numbers that were furnished by the startup and the investment ecosystem. The global startup economy is worth $3.8 trillion in the ecosystem value. So if you look at it more closely, there are over 79 economies that exist globally today which sort of generate a revenue of $4 billion approximately or at an average. Now, if you look at a geography-wise breakdown, Silicon Valley obviously takes the number one spot, followed by London and New York City tied for number 2. And then we have Beijing and Boston following at number 4 and 5 respectively. North America very naturally dominates the startup activity that happens globally, followed by Asia and then of Europe. Now we can look at the percentage in terms of the ecosystem that they sort of captured in these particular geographies as follows. North America has 50% of the top 30 ecosystem, followed by Asia with 27% and Europe with 17% of the top performing ecosystems globally. There are a lot of small ecosystems that are also prominently doing a lot of good when it comes to the startup and investment activity globally in terms of Singapore, Hong Kong, and even Estonia. So when we look at the Asian context, when it comes to the Chinese market, what they essentially are having is a very strong foothold in the local market. But when it comes to the Japanese startup and investment ecosystem, they're more prominent globally. Now, when we talk about the startup and investment ecosystem, we cannot shy away from the fact that it is the land of unicorns. So when it comes to the global context, let's look at the unicorn numbers. Very interestingly, when it comes to the startup activity where North America takes the lead, when it comes to the unicorn activity, it is Asia that takes the lead, followed by USA and then Europe. Now, when we look at the percentage in these areas, we have to see that 36% of the unicorns come from Asia. Then we also have 30% coming from US and 27% coming from Europe. Obviously, when it comes to industry that sort of offers that scalability and allows a startup to go to the unicorn club, software and data is untouched. There are over 24,000 startups that are there in this particular sector and around 255 unicorns that this software data sector furnishes. The next most active industry after software and data is social and leisure technology. They sort of have around 8,000 startups, but the unicorn numbers is always very low. Right now, it's sitting at 26. While we have social and leisure technology, which has a lot of startup but less unicorns, we also have e-commerce and retail, which again furnish a lot of unicorns coming out of this sector. As of now, social and e-commerce industry have around 119 unicorns coming out of this particular sector. Other industries and the sort of unicorn numbers that these industries furnish are as follows. We have fintech featuring over 8,000 startups and 110 unicorns, health technology featuring over 6,000 startups and 40 unicorns, transportation and technology featuring just around 2,000 startups but around 55 unicorns. Now that we've seen the sector-wise breakdown of the number of unicorns that can be furnished from each of these scalable sectors, let's look at the sectors that are making a lot of splash and sort of did a lot of numbers in the year of 2021. One of the fastest growing and emerging sectors that are going to make a lot of splash even in the year of 2022 is that of deep technology. Deep technology, which is innovation rich and science and engineering sector, remains the fastest growing sector in the year of 2021 and it is projected to grow phenomenally in the year of 2022. The next fast growing sector is that of life sciences, especially telemedicine, which sort of saw a lot of activity during the COVID-19 pandemic and also post the COVID-19 pandemic, and again is touted to do large numbers in the year of 2022. The pandemic also saw cybersecurity startup prosper a lot because of the work from home situation, and also gaming and edtech startups did a huge number last year and is projected to do huge numbers even in the year of 2022. Now, when we look at the global context, what essentially has happened, each geography sort of were furnishing a lot of funds, a lot of relaxations and exemptions in order to foster this entrepreneurship wave and also ride this high that was there in terms of valuation and the numbers that this ecosystem furnished. Some of the global enablers in terms of geography are as follows. Spain had unveiled a 10-year cover program that sort of gave tax exemptions and allowed people to set up shop in Spain and allowed foreign investors to come and invest in Spanish companies. Germany went ahead and launched a $12 billion future fund which sort of concentrated on the technology startups and were about enabling technology startup in this particular ecosystem. The African countries together and individually have been rolling on multiple startup acts in order to allow the startups to set up shop and have tax exemptions, and multiple grants have been given so that the ecosystem can prosper internally. Brazil also recently passed a law to shore up legal framework for starting businesses, and last year Victoria, Australia launched a $2 billion fund to drive decade worth of investment in life sciences, advanced manufacturing, clean tech and other sector startups. One very interesting observation that was made in the year of 2021 was in terms of diversity. While the funding around the world rose, the share received by women-led companies fell down to 27% as opposed to the 29% in 2019. In better news, funding for black founders in US, while still small, quadrupled in the first half of 2021, driven by the energized racial justice movement. Now that we've looked at the sector breakdown and we've looked at the unicorn land and we've looked at the geographies and the numbers that these geographies furnish, let's look at the private investment landscape that existed globally. In the Q1 to Q3 of 2021, there were around 4,605 buyouts globally, breaking the previous annual record. The private equity firms reportedly raised $630 billion in the first 9 months of 2021. According to the current trends, fundraising could also top $1.2 trillion this year and next. Now, while these were the numbers that the private investment sectors furnished, when it came to the innovation sector, there was one clear leader, that was Singapore. When it came to innovation, Singapore was put ahead of cities like New York and Tel Aviv in terms of the R&D capacity and the innovation hub that particular city harbored. The KPMG Global Annual Report listed the top 10 innovation hub, out of which 6 were Asian countries. Now that we've looked at the private investment numbers and the innovation index that existed in the global context, let's look at the trends that the investors are going to look at in 2022. First and foremost, one thing is pretty clear. Today, data is the new oil. So the access to that data has to be made easy. All the solutions that are going to be provided in order to make this data access easy are going to see a lot of investments getting poured in from the investors. Secondly, there's also this whole conversation about cloud going vertical. Cloud and software vendors now offer vertical specific solutions that modernize legacy processes and jumpstart innovation. Deploying them is the process of assembly, thus freeing up organizations to focus on competitive differentiators. And finally, one of the most talked about trend that is going to see a lot of activity in the coming year is that of blockchain. The whole distributed ledger technology and the applications of it is obviously very controversial because it is different for every geography, but it is going to make the numbers in the coming years. The crux of the matter remains this. While USA continues to be a dominating factor, Asia is a very interesting player in these coming years. All we have to do is wait and observe what these geographies furnish and also look at the small players, because it is all about the small players coming into the forefront and making this particular ecosystem what it is today.